How's it going, everybody? Oh man, been a, had been a long week between. So of course, last week didn't stream. Mom was in town. She was in town basically all week. Did a bunch of work around my house, and yet didn't get as much done as I wanted. What else have we got? I've got not next week, but the week after. I think that's right. I have a club meeting with Hans George Evers, so I'll definitely be going to that one because it's talking about the fish of Sulawesi, which that gets you into things kind of in the realm of rainbow fish in a sense. Not necessarily specifically them, right? But still that general area of the world. So it's stuff that if it's not dedicated to rainbow fish, makes me a little more interested about learning some of the other biotopes and stuff like that. Some of the other fish that are beyond just what I know of, which is mostly the Australian habitats. But yeah, this stuff coming up. So topic is a little on note. We'll talk about one thing, and I've said this as an answer to a question several times, but I kind of wanted to talk about it as a topic first before I get into an actual poll. I will poll you fine folks. We'll see how you guys think I should take my next tank. I'm working this week on basically prep work. I did a bunch of aquarium maintenance last week. A number of filters getting serviced. I still have more to service. A lot of cleanup around the house. Spring cleaning kind of late as summer has basically started. But yeah, so I want to get into this topic because we'll have a poll and then we'll probably hit into Q&A afterward. So I get this question a lot. What fish should I pick for my blank aquarium? It'll often be like, I'm getting a 40-gallon breeder, or I'm getting a 10-gallon, or whatever the heck it may be. So what fish should I stock in it? And I have a personal rule, and this has become a rule probably about 6 months into me coming back to this hobby. It did not take me long because I used to kind of do this as a kid. So what I do, especially if I have a local fish store where I'm going to go look at fish. If you're doing this online, it's a little harder, but you can still take the same concept. So the differences online would be small. So I'll go to a local fish store and I will walk up and down every freshwater tank they have. And assuming they don't have African cichlids. If they have African cichlids, I'm probably going to ignore those because I don't really keep Africans. It takes a bit of work in the Seattle area to keep Africans because there's just nothing in our water, and our water's not very hard. So you have to actually buffer your water quite a lot. So more tropical fish, a lot easier. And what I'll do is I'll try to spend a minute or two if I can, and it's not very busy. I might spend 5 minutes at looking at kind of all of the tanks. And what I mean is not like 5 minutes looking at every tank. I mean a minute or two at every tank. And then if I find myself watching for 5 minutes or so, maybe even longer, that's where I will keep that in my head. And after I've walked and I've looked at every fish in the store, I'm going to think to myself, okay, I need to figure out what size tank I'm doing, and do I think that fish fits that size tank? Because if I'm looking at a fish and I know it's going to get 8 inches, and I'm doing a 20-gallon, that's not a good fit, right? So then what I'll do is I'll think about what are the top 4 or 5 fish that I looked at. that I want to go back and look at again. And then I'll go back. I'll go back to each of those tanks and I will watch those fish for 5 to 10 minutes apiece. And you're probably thinking, this is a lot of time, right? But when I'm shopping for fish, I want to take my time because this is something I'm bringing home with the intent of keeping for a long period of time. If I make a quick decision, I might regret it. But if I take my time, I'm going to be happier with that decision, right? So I'll go back and I'll watch them for 5 to 10 minutes. And especially if there's a 10-minute watch of a fish and I'm just like, yeah. And then I think to myself, of all the fish out of these 4 or 5 that I've watched, which one do I want to go back to and watch the most? And if I can definitively say it's the neon tetra or it's the stir-by corridora or whatever it may be, whatever that fish is in that fish store, I'll go back. And if I don't know that fish very well, that's where I'm going to talk to somebody who works in the store. And I'm just going to ask them a couple of quick questions. What kind of temperature does this fish typically like? About how big does it get? And has anyone who works in the store kept this fish for a long period of time, at least a year or two? And if they have somebody, I'm going to talk to that person. And I'm just going to ask them certain questions. You know, and it's the easy stuff. It's like, does this fish dig up plants? Do they like other fish, or do they really want to be on their own? Are they good in groups, or are they only good in like a pair? Right? These are the questions I want to ask. Because if you think about it, if you were to think like, oh, I really like German blue rams, and you went and were like, I'm going to get 10 of them. Then you find out, oh, they're kind of territorial, and they'll sort of pick fights with each other once they're adults. That's not good. And then, after I've asked those questions, if I still am like, I like that fish, do you know what I do? I don't buy it. I go home, I buy something else. I'll buy fish food or some other thing so that I didn't completely waste the fish store's time. But what I'll do is I'll go home and I will research that fish more. Try to understand its care requirements. Will it do well with the things that I want to put in this tank? And usually, for me, that's thinking about plants and rock or wood, if I'm going to do that, whatever that may be, right? I'm going to make sure I do my research, and I'm going to start setting up my tank. I'm going to give that tank lots of time to cycle. And then, once I know that that tank is ready, it's had plenty of time, then I go back and buy that fish. And if I know I want that really specific fish, I will call that store back. And if they don't have them in stock, I'm going to ask them to order them for me. Because I went to that one store, right? I already used a bunch of their time. I asked their employees. I got information. I want to make sure that I'm rewarding that store for helping me on that decision at the same time. So how does that change if we're doing this online, right? Online, it's kind of simple. Instead of watching the fish swim, I'm gonna look at pictures of fish. And I'm gonna pick my, 5 that I like the most. And then I'm gonna go on YouTube or Instagram and I'm gonna look them up and I'm gonna try and find videos of them so I can watch them swim. See what they look like in a normal environment and not potentially in their full breeding dress. Because often certain fish, especially your cichlids, you see that picture when they're in their best breeding dress. They look incredible. But they're only like that a couple days a month or a couple days a quarter, or maybe only like a week a year. Depends on the fish. So I want to look at what it looks like most of the time and what I can expect. Because I don't want to have that instance. And I've had this from talking to some friends that own fish stores or work in fish stores, of people being like, I saw a picture of this fish and I bought that fish from you and it looks nothing like it. And it's like, well, the picture you looked at online is full breeding dress and it's only like that for like a couple days every 3 months or so. This is what it looks like most of the time, but it has really cool behavior and it's beautiful. And when it is in breeding dress, man, you're just going to love it. It's going to be one of those things you're going to be so happy to see. Yeah, it doesn't happen super often, but when it does, it's incredible, right? Those are the things that I think can be easy misconceptions if we're just looking at pictures online and we don't go look it up in depth and really find whether it's a species profile or just a video of someone who has that fish talking about it. Maybe they picked it up at a club auction. If you're looking at like Goodeids and Live Bears, maybe you're going to go watch Mike from the Fish Tank Barn. If you're looking for catfish and that kind of stuff, maybe we're going to watch Tom from TM Aquatics, whoever that may be, right? There's lots of people out there that are specialists. Rainbowfish are going to watch anyone other than me because I only have so many species. But you know what I mean? Watch the way the fish move, their behavior, all those things, so that it's not something when you get them, you're surprised by them. Because they're going to act way different in a fish store tank than they are in your tank. And when they really settle in and they've got places to hide and cover and they get used to you and know that you're the one that's going to feed them, their behavior changes, right? Especially fish like rainbowfish is a great example where they're just like, do you have food? I did not eat 5 minutes ago. Do you have food? I love you if you have food. I'm right here. I'm so beautiful. I love you. Can you please give me some food? No, no, no. You did not just feed me 5 minutes ago. Please give me more food. Right? They'll just, their behavior changes. They get so used to you. They get kind of beggy sometimes, or maybe there's ones where like they'll follow you down the tank. You get fish like puffers that really are kind of like puppy dogs. They have huge personality. Some of your cichlids, Oscars are kind of notorious for having a lot of personality. You'll get fish like loaches that just like lay on their side randomly, and you might think they're dead, and it spooks the hell out of you. And it turns out, no, they're fine. They just do that, especially when they sleep. Little things like this that are important to learn before we take a fish home so that we don't like act rashly or get the wrong fish for our aquarium. An example would be like if I was keeping a tank and I'm running it unheated, well, I'm not going to pick discus, right? I might think discus look amazing, but if I'm planning on not running that tank super hot and I learn like, oh, discus really like to be in like 80 plus degrees, I'm probably going to rule that fish out and start looking for something else that's very colorful but can handle the way that my tank is designed. I really think that a more measured and careful approach, it's so easy. It's so easy to impulse buy in the fish hobby, right? It is so easy. Just go, I really like that fish. That fish looks amazing. And it can happen to even the most experienced members of us. People like me will watch a video from Dan's Fish and I'll just be like, I want it. I want that. That one. Like those those like dwarf fire eels that he's been getting in. I like those things a lot. My wife wants those things a lot. And very frequently, this a good question on topic, Bob Purcell. Do you plan the tank around the fish or the fish around the tank? I do both. So sometimes I will have a very specific fish in mind, and I'm building a tank designed for that fish. I keep a lot of rainbow fish, so very often I don't have lots of like little spiky branches and things like that, right? Because they're dopes and they'll run into them and hurt themselves. But sometimes I will pick a fish that I know I really want, and then I'll figure out how to build the tank for that fish. An example would be like my Wabbenmooster plecos, right? I built a tank to carry them. Uh, and that's just, it's a matter of, I think you can kind of do both, right? You can know like there are certain things I want in my tank, but I really want this fish. So how do I get kind of both of these things to occur? Get a dolphin and orca. Where am I going to keep that? I mean, I appreciate the troll here, but a dolphin. There is no way to safely and for the health of the animal, it's a mammal at this point, keep those animals. The hell? I mean, there are like the baby orcas, but not really my jam. So, Leo, am I judging you? Everybody has their time in the hobby where impulse buys like literally rule your life, right? I had that for a while. I had collectoritis so hard for the first like year and a half of coming back to the hobby in Rainbowfish. After I figured out I love Rainbowfish, I was grabbing species left and right. I had so many tanks that were like, okay, there's 5 species in this tank, there's 4 in that one, there's 6 over there. The big tank has like 10 different species in it. And as my hobby evolved, so did my ability to curtail that like impulse, right? Because I realized I want to make better and better things. So we'll go over the fish that I'm looking at for my next tank, and I will build a poll so that you guys can do it. First, we're going to talk about each one, then I'll put the poll up so you guys can vote, and then afterward we'll dive into Q&A, right? Oh, actually, before I do that, I like what Nabokov fan has. So I usually answer the stocking question with, what is your favorite color? And then choose some fish that fit. As far as it being philosophy, we answer with our own experience, especially this. Yeah, I think that's not a bad one, because if somebody wants, like, I want a red fish, you're not going to give them a turquoise rainbow, right? But I think there's lots of different approaches. If I was doing that from the perspective of, like, giving advice at a fish store, it would be very different than, like, my personal advice that I usually give here in live streams and stuff, because I can kind of, most people who are like looking for something to buy, Leo sometimes is guilty of this. They'll ask a lot of questions, and then it's just about giving them the best information and letting them make the decision, because they're the one that hasn't lived with that fish, right? Bentley could love Bozeman eye rainbows all day long, but if you're trying to put together a 20-gallon tank and I suggest a Bozeman eye, you're probably not going to be very happy, because that fish is not going to do that well, right? So little things like that. All right, so let's walk through the fish I have in mind. Most of these are available on Dan's Fish. I think only one comes through Marcel, for those who know Marcel, Roseline 17. Why don't we start with that one? So first hitter is a fish that I used to have a number of, but when I had that huge heat wave a couple of years ago, I actually lost basically all of them, and I kind of want to get them again because they're really cool, and they have a more unique color pattern in Rainbow. All of these will be Rainbowfish, by the way. If that wasn't obvious, all of these will be Rainbowfish. I'll probably put some other fish in with the rainbows, and maybe whenever I figure out what that nonsense is going to be, we'll do another one of these to go with them. That's these guys. This is the Melanitania etnaensis. So what you can kind of see is lots of color in the bottom of the body, right? And then in the males, that bottom quarter, kind of like a Frederick eye, gets a lot of black. You got a big black stripe, nice orange color in the fins. The females actually keep nice yellow in the top of their body. They just don't get that, like, beautiful kind of sunsetty coloration in the lower portion, or that big black splotch toward the back lower quarter of the body, right? That's typical of the males. Okay, so this is the Melanitania etnaensis. This is the first one I'm looking at. The second one should be really obvious in the fact that it's another rainbow, but it's a fish that basically got me into this hobby. Bozeman eye. But specifically, I have two options here. I can either do the Aves Creek, which is what this fish is, or I do have the ability to get the Bozeman eye ooters, which are the ones that get like super dark, almost red in the back, and their blue gets so dark it's almost black in the front. I didn't find a picture of these just because I had only so much time before stream. But Bozeman eye, I can get the ooters from a local source, but I've really liked the Aves Creek because they have both the orange and the yellow, And they're a little more blue in the front, which is the kind of like classic Bozeman that I like a lot. They also don't get super huge because they grow extremely slow. And similar, just for those, this would also be the tank, for those who've been watching for a while, that I will be working with my wife to do another aquascape again. So this will be an aquascaped tank again. Next option, a kind of perennial favorite. This is the Chalatherina eleni wapoga. So, very classic, red, orange in the fins, big yellow stripe on the bottom part of the body, blue stripe up top. These are really young ones from Dan, so you don't see full color, but when they're full color, they're an incredible fish. This is another one that I can either get through Dan or I can get through a local source. I might do like a mixture of them just to kind of like get some diversified genetics. But doesn't get super big, tops out at about 3.5 to 4 inches. They're a Chalatherina, so they've got a little bit elongated body. They don't get quite as tall. Some of the Chalatherinas get really tall in the body, but these guys typically don't get super huge. And they're very fast. There are some quick lads and ladies. They're fast fish. Finally, this one is kind of new and interesting that I like a lot. This is the Goldii species, so another Melanitania goldii, mayone, which comes from the Tamika River. So this is a lot like a kind of like turboed out Melanitania bowmani, because you can kind of see it's got like a little orange stripe in the body, that nice orange finnage, right? And then yellow up top. This is kind of a newer fish. There's not a ton of them in the hobby. So basically, like, whoever Dan sources is like the main breeder in the United States for this one. I like this fish a lot, but what I will say is that they're kind of like the Herbert axelrodi, the yellow rainbow fish, and kind of like a bowmani. So they have similar coloration and appearance to a lot of other fish. So I gotta understand where people might want to be like, yeah, maybe look at these other ones. But I'm curious to see how, because as you guys know, as rainbows get older, their color develops more and more, and they really go, like, the older they get, kind of the crazier they look. And that's kind of one thing. These are young fish, and I haven't seen like full-sized breeders of them yet. So we'll start a poll. And we'll see what y'all think. Now, granted, I still have to like set up the tank, let it cycle. This is where we'll put the FX2. We'll also put, just for reference, this is where the new co-op light I'm going to test on this tank. So we'll put my boy. We got to do the... Trying to type around my mic is kind of tough. I won't lie. The Etnaensis. And finally, the Goldii Mayo. All right. I guess we could or Ooter. If we select one of the ones where I have like multiple options, aka the Bozeman, we might do another vote to see whether you guys want Aves Creek or whether you want Ooters. Boom. Poll option. Let's see what happens. So I'll let you guys do that for a wee bit. So just a reminder, Goldii Mayone currently on the screen. These are young eleni wapogas. This is the Aves Creek Bozeman. The Ooters, the only big difference is that there's almost none of the yellow. Deep reddish orange in the back, practically black up front on the males. And then finally, the Etnaensis. This is a little more unique rainbow, not kind of rare, but also it's kind of like, it takes a long time to color up. So it'd be one of those ones that would take a sweet time. Johnny from Dan's Fish, I see you. I specifically want the classic coloration of the Eleni-Waipoga. Because when you start getting the Eleni-Waipoga red, they start looking like Eleni Sirawu, and I would rather have that classic, like, more yellow than the reds and oranges. I love that big yellow stripe and that, like, red forehead that a classic Eleni-Waipoga gets. The red when they turn their breeding stripe on, for the males, that is. I love that coloration because it's so distinct, and I love the striations of color rather than the more uniform red that the red form gets. I will admit, beautiful fish, but I'm picky. So go ahead, vote. We'll see what happens. It looks like early votes, there's a strong favorite. But we're going to let this run through most of the stream so that folks can vote. And then that will inform what I do to that tank. There were some other ones I was looking at. I'll tell you guys. I don't have pictures, but I only researched the ones I actually wanted to get you guys to vote on. For a little bit, I was looking at the Melanitania rubra vittata, which is the Waipoga red laser. It's kind of like the Praecox rainbow on steroids. And I was also looking at the Melanitania Gary Langi. But I kind of want to do a very different tank for those compared to what I know my wife wants to do as an aquascape. So I kind of like ruled those out, and it's like, we'll do those later. We'll do that a little later. Let's see here. Kaylee Caulfield. I have a large rainbow the size of a bozeman eye, but mostly silver color with 2 faint yellow stripes on the top and red stripes on the bottom. Kind of wide fin on top and bottom. Interesting. So that sounds like potentially a female of either, well, okay, hold on. So Gary Langi's have a lot of red and yellow color, but it's usually throughout the whole body. Kaylee, if you ever have a chance to shoot me an email with a picture, let me get my email in chat. Man, when I can do some major updates to my setup, I'll be so happy not to have my mic kind of like right here in front of my typing ability. Richie Collins, who do you source your ooter from? So, I have a local that raises ooters that he got from Gary Lang. So if you visit the Rainbowfish Live group on Facebook, there's a gentleman named Jason who's he's in like the Seattle crew of Rainbow Psychos. And he's the one that has the ooters and has been breeding them. I would basically be getting them at like, I think a month old. So they'd be little bitty babies. Just because of how timing would probably work with him. But they're fun to raise up. And when they're in like a 40-gallon breeder, they do kind of grow a little faster than growing up in some of the smaller raising tanks that a lot of people tend to do. But basically I might actually have to wait longer on the ooters. It depends, because we're putting an FX2 on this thing, and that's got a decent amount of flow. Although I am using a spray bar. We're going to tame some of that flow down with a spray bar. But they have to get to a certain size in order to be okay in that much flow. Which, honestly, about a month can handle it. But if you want to play it really safe, like 2 to 3 months. But, yeah, I have a local. He's one of the 3 people. He actually works in a fish store. He works at Denny's Pet World, which is in Kirkland, Washington. For those that are in the Seattle area, he's there pretty frequently. I don't know his schedule for certain. I think he's mostly a Monday through Friday guy, if I remember right. But super nice guy, works in the fish department. He's the guy that made I have to move some things, but boop boop boop. There we go. He's the guy that makes these cool like Rainbowfish magnets. If you've seen some of these before, those are all his work. So I know that he's got a number of things. Kingfisher's Catch, I had a vial of Ooter eggs from Gary Lang, but they didn't make it. You know, I've noticed that because I've had Ooter eggs. I lost all but 2, and that to fungus, mind you, in like a day. And they were fine. They were near the point of hatching, and they hit my water and like that fungused up. And then the 2 that were left did not survive beyond the like 1 week mark. So that's kind of like the rough part. I've seen a number of people have trouble with the Ooters. We had another group of people raise up Ooters for a while, and then they were getting divided among 3 different people. And none of us were able to keep them for very long. There was something with that particular fish where they're a little more finicky, but once you get them stable in your water, especially if you can get the adults to raise up and start laying in your water, then it changes. You have almost no problems with them because then they become the bulletproof bozeman that we're used to. But when they're super young, big shifts in water parameters seem to have issues with their eggs. And the Ooters especially are kind of notorious for it, which is a little disheartening because it's such a cool fish. Okay, Isabel C. And we'll open a question and answer. So at Bentley Pasco makes it super easy for me to see your questions. If you do have questions, like shoot them my way. We'll walk through some Q&A for the rest of the night. Hi, Bentley. Which plants would you suggest to put in the back of a 55-gallon? No CO2, Fluval 3.0 lights. Thank you. So the question becomes, Isabel, how much maintenance you want to do. And what I mean is, do you mind trimming them regularly? Because then you can start looking at stems. If you want really easy stuff, things like Pogostemon octopus, Ludwigia repens, water sprites, water wisteria. There's a lot of like good, easy stem options to really fill out the back. If you want stuff that grows a little slower, but won't require as much maintenance, you could look at things like Vallisneria, so Jungle Val or Italian Val. Italian Val is a little skinnier, Jungle Val is a little thicker. They will throw runners and grow all over the place over time. You could look at something like an Amazon sword in one part of the tank, and that will take up like a third of the tank on its own. It gives you this big, wonderful, robust plant over time. And then you can put other stuff elsewhere. You could do something similar to me, where if you don't want them to go all the way to the top of the tank, I have in flooded forest, right? I'm using nymphaeas, so lilies, to fill up space and bring a pop of color. They're really not that difficult. It's just keep in mind they're a root feeder, so they like decent substrate when possible. Not necessarily required. They don't have to have CO2. Just if you want that like ridiculously deep red in a red tiger lotus, CO2 is the easy way. Not required. I've had beautiful red tiger lotus without CO2, but it's the easy way. Bob Purcell has another plant that I keep, Crypt Sri Lanka. Crypt Sri Lanka is a really cool crypt that will grow fairly tall and narrow. So it's kind of a nice background plant for a crypt. And then again, you're dealing with a crypt, easy peasy, doesn't require basically anything, doesn't require super high light. So if you're trying to bring that light down some and not have super bright light because you're dealing with algae issues, Crypt Sri Lanka can be wonderful. Standard Java fern can actually get kind of tall. If you want just basic Java fern, it can get some good height to it. Not quite the size of, say, a sword, but it will get some good size. And then finally, you can look at things like some of the Aponegitans. They get good height to them, or a thing like Crypt. I don't usually like Crypt Balancea because I think that's actually a tougher plant for most people. But like Crypt Spiralis, it's a real slow grower, but once it's happy, you'll get these nice whippy lengths to it. It looks really good, but it doesn't go as quite as crazy as like Vallisneria will on you, where it's just like tries to take over your entire tank. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of options. And also, it can come down to this: there's lots of really good hygrophilas too that get beautiful foliage and aren't too crazy. The question comes down to: is there a particular color you want? Are you trying to get more red? Are you trying to get more? You want like really bright green? Do you want darker greens? Do you want like long, kind of more blade of grass foliage? Do you want something that's more rounded in its foliage? There's lots of things you can play with and mess with as far as bringing texture and color to your tank that can let you go like, okay, well, I want a little bit of this because it's got a grassy look, and then I want something of this because it's a little rounded and interesting, right? Tons of options. It just comes down to like what's your jam? When you think of all these things and look at them, like what does it do for you? Sanus Ward. I said that wrong. Zane Simorg? I'm assuming that's Zane Simorg. Probably pronouncing that last name wrong. Anyway, should I buy 10 Bumblebee Catfish? And what size tank for the group? I have to remind myself on the Bumblebee Cat real fast. I can't remember how big they get. I think they stay relatively small, don't they? Because they're one of the smaller, they're like a woodcat style catfish, aren't they? Yeah, they only get like 3 inches. So, I would say, in general, most catfish are pretty... How do I put this? They're pretty social. They like to be in groups. Same with, like, loaches. They actually like being in groups. So... I would probably be looking at trying to do something like a group of 6, maybe 8. I want to check to make sure I didn't miss. Did you tell me a number? No, you didn't tell me a number. Okay, good. And as far as tank size, I would start with something like a 20 long or larger. 3 inches. You want to give them a little bit of room to move around, but they don't need a ton of room because they're not getting super huge, right? And we're a catfish. We're probably a little more. We're not super active. So you could probably do like a 20 long with 6 of them and be just fine. Just make sure you have places for them to hide, because catfish usually like something kind of tubular or something like that they can hide in. Driftwood would be a great example. Robert Johnson, please get the Aves Creek Postmon. I have a Tinjo and want to see the difference. Would you order from Dan? Yeah, so in the case of the Aves Creek, I'd order from Dan because my locals aren't keeping the Aves Creek right now. Hoon Aquatics, say, hey, buddy. Speaking of somebody who's kept Aves Creek for a while. And also Aves Creek, at least in the experience of some better Rainbowfish keepers than me, aka that guy in chat, Hoon Aquatics, they will breed inside a tank and leave their babies alone. So that's nice. But that gradient they have is really cool. It's one of the things that makes them very, very interesting to me. But yeah. We'll probably have a poll here soon that's like Aves Creek versus Ooter. I just want to see if it's even remotely close. Oh man, it's not even remotely close. I do appreciate the 24% of you that voted for Etnaensis, though. I'll get them one day no matter what, because I really like that fish. But, yeah. Oh, man. Oh, Bob Purcell. I like this question. We need a drink. We need a drink. All right. Of your 5, if your 5 rainbow choices were muscle cars, which one would they be? All right. So, let me do pictures again. Etnaensis. A little smaller, kind of the dark horse, a little weird in its color. So the way that I see this like a 30s chop top Mercury lead sled that's like black with red flames on it. And if you've never seen one of those, just look up like 30s Mercury lead sled. You'll see a ton of hot rodded out pictures of them. Lots of rounded, very, very popular car for a period of time. Very popular hot rod. The Bozeman, the classic. To me, this is like maybe not necessarily a muscle car because you got that two-tone. To me, this is the Chevrolet Bel Air, right? That classic two-tone can be souped up a little bit to become a bit of a drag car, become a little fast, but that classic just two-tone, that's that car that screams classic car and still commons. You see them out there every once in a while, and you're just like, them guys in the 50s, they knew what they were doing. They were making a pretty vehicle. I know you specifically called out like muscle cars, but that's not how I roll. Because anything can become a muscle car with enough effort. Olaniwapoga. Now this is that like elongated, fast, really aggressive car. I would look at this as something like a 70 Dodge Challenger. Right? Just that big, long nose and butt to it. Just a really accessibly long muscle car. Very fast in straight lines. Big flash of color. Lots of character. That's this. So for those that aren't familiar, that's also like the Charger, right? Charger, Challenger, basically the same car in the grand scheme of things. Finally, we got the new kid on the block. The Goldie Eye Bayonne, right? From Tamika. This is a little different. It's not classic, a little rarer, not something you're gonna see on the street every day. So to me, this is kind of like an old Hudson Hornet, right? Because when you see it, you're like, I don't know what that is, but I like it. And for the car nerds, you're like, that's a Hudson. Those were some legit race cars back in the day, right? Beautiful, iconic car. Kind of fits this fish where it's like not very common, but when you see it, you're like, yes, I like it, and I want more of it. There you go. I will compare fish to cars. This psychotic brain can handle that. I was raised in a hot rod shop. Okay, I think we have to do poll number 2. Oh, M&C Aquatics. Who's Tamika? Tamika is the name of the river that fish came from. I like this question though. Because of you from M&C, well, so I guess it's not really a question per se, but can be. Because of you, I picked up 6 Leopoldi Angels. Would they be fine in a 125 with Ultims roughly the same size? Planetang. They should be. My biggest concern is make sure you know how to tell the difference between an Ultim and the Leopoldi. It should be really obvious, right, if you've kept Angels enough. Leopoldi have a very different nose shape, and they're not quite as... They're a little longer this way in the body, where Ultims are much taller over time. And you'll also notice, like, there's in the back at the top of their pectoral fin, when you start getting toward their actual, like, tail fin, there's usually a spot that's a part of so there's like a spot and then the rest of a line that's broken apart. That's one of the key ways to tell a Leopoldi from any other angelfish. Other than they kind of have like a Roman style nose where it's not as angular, it's kind of rounded in the front of their face. But yeah, they should be fine as long as they're similar size. The only worry is when they start pairing up is everybody playing the like, this is my territory, let's fight game, right? It's atypical of angelfish. Leopoldis especially can be a little more protective of their territory, but they don't really like hurt each other. They'll just like fight constantly back and forth because they're dopes. All right, we're gonna kill this poll and we're gonna do a new poll. Bozeman are the victors, so that means my wife is gonna have to aquascape for a Bozeman tank. So we got Aves Creek versus Ooter. Okay, guys. Poll 2. You can have Aves Creek and Ooter. Remember, this is the Aves Creek here. It's where you've got that beautiful gradation. You still get the yellow in the body, a little bit more blue up front, and that nice deep orange in the back. Whereas the difference would be in an Ooter, very deep orange, practically red in the back, and the front is almost black. It gets so dark, and there's no variation. There's no gradation. Also, the Uders get a bit larger than the Aves Creek. The Aves Creek are like the most notoriously slow grower. Other than there is the what is it, Kromsa, right? Kromsa River. They're the smallest of all the Bozeman, and I cannot find those things at all. I gotta show the Uder. Fine, hold on. I'm gonna go look it up. Make me work. Jeez. Oh. Watch a tech nerd quickly work. Okay, this is a neuter. Boop. You do it this way. Bonk. So you can see similar orange color, but it does get even darker where it's almost red in the back of the uter, and then that front is like black. It gets so dark. This is the difference between the two. These will all be going into a 40-gallon breeder. So the wife and I, who was in chat earlier, honey, if you're still here, hello. We're going to scape up a tank. And then this is the main fish for the tank. We'll probably have something else in there. Like, I don't know if it'll be corridoras or loaches or something else that fits the similar temperature. But this is the primary fish will be either our Aves Creek up top, Uders down below. Aves Creek I would be getting from Dan at Dan's Fish. So if you really want those, that's where you get them. And then Uders, I have a local source to get them. It might take longer to get that fish because I gotta have to make him breed them and get. He's been getting eggs, to be clear. They're actively breeding, but just I need them raised to a certain size before they can go into my tank. Because this is where the FX2 is going. That's going to put a little bit of flow on it. So we need to make sure that they're not too small when they go in so that they can handle the flow safely. It's all about safety here. Got to make sure that these fish are happy and healthy, right? But yeah, we'll probably have like some snails in there. Won't have shrimp because rainbowfish are like, shrimp, delicious. But these are your choices. Uter and Aves Creek. This is really close. I won't lie. I'm kind of impressed. Only 31 votes so far. Come on. Flex your power. Can I change my vote plus 1% for Uter? Maybe we'll have to like community poll it or something. I don't know. Nabokov fan, if you get Uders, I might have to ship you some black corridoras. Are those the black Schultzei or the black I guess they're kind of the black Venezuelan, but I don't think the black Venezuelan is actually a Schultzei. I only know this because I watch Tom from TM Aquatics, and he is like my catfish guru. Things are flexing in the poll. I like it. It's bouncing. It's bouncing. That see you guys have the power. You guys have the power. Oh, Aves Creek start to pull ahead. Yeah, I will get both eventually. I'll be very clear. I will have Uders. I have to put pictures away so that you can actually see me. I'm so animated with my hands. If I can't do it, I'll go crazy. I will eventually have Uders and Aves Creek in my house in different tanks. But for this tank, with my wife, choice is yours. If you get the Uders, you have to share with me. I mean, I could probably get some shipped to people if I really had to, but it takes some time. Yeah. The captions keep calling the Uders Hooters. Oh no. Oh. Yeah. I might be dead. And yeah, Hoon Aquatics would like to mention that this, we'll put our pictures back up. Boop. The we want to call them the darker Bozeman so that the captions don't keep seeing the wrong word. Oh, that's Etnaeans. What am I doing? Bentley, failing at life. There it is. This fish right here, by the way, was only 2 inches when this picture was taken of the Aves Creek. So they're that colorful at 2 inches, where the ooters that are pictured here are, I think they were like 3.5 inches. They take a little longer to color up. But when they do, they are very obviously like that 2 different color fish, right? That where it's like front half one color, back half another color. Where I love that gradient that you get in the Aves Creek. I love them both. Let's be fair here, right? I love both. But I got people voting just because captions turn not English into other English words. Oh man. At Bentley Pasco, dueling aquascapes with Mrs. Bentley and brother-in-law James. My CC is showing looters. At least looters is slightly safer. I don't know if we'll ever do like dueling aquascapes. James, brother-in-law James got to choose a lot with his tank. We do have some. He will be doing like probably a second tank at some point, but that requires us doing a bunch of stuff in the house. Where he's like moving rooms in the house. And then when he does that, he'll probably put up a second tank. So his small tank will stay as is with its cherry barbs. And then he'll do another tank to do some other stuff. Deep red on top. So the Schultz Eye Black. Okay. Schultz Eye Blacks are really cool fish. I won't lie. What I really want, though, I'm not going to... If I were to go a Cory specifically, I might have some different options too, but Schultz Eye Blacks are really sweet. They're a really cool fish. Well, there are certain fish that I love, but I'll let you guys vote because I'm a psycho. I'm into that. Oh man. Paul Saltero, since you're going with a 40 breeder, I'd go with the Aves Creek. If it was 60B, I'd go with the larger ooters. Sure, I can understand that. And then there was also the question of whether or not they can be kept in a 40 breeder for a lifetime. If the group is small enough with ooter, then yes, they could stay in a 40 breeder their entire life. So if I was keeping only, say, like 6 or 7, they'd be fine in a 40 breeder. I can keep more of the Aves because they stay smaller. So it's kind of one of those things, if you want to see a larger school of fish, and the colors are close enough to where that doesn't matter to you, you would want to vote for Aves. But if you really care about specific coloration, or maybe you want to see a larger fish in the tank, then that's where you'd look at the ooter, right? Because the ooter is a little bit bigger. They get a little bit taller in the body too. They get that like typical rainbow body height in the males. But yeah, get Corydoras equus. I have some orchids and endlers. I have a group of 7 equus cories that live with my running river rainbowfish. And it's really cool because they mid-water swim a lot. Equus are really cool like that. And they'll swim with the running river school because the running river school is a really tight schooler of a rainbow fish. And it's super fun to just sit and watch them as they're just like swimming about. It's really fun to watch. It's a really cool tank. I actually need to do a bunch of extra plant work in that tank because I'm swapping some plants out of it and into it. I think that's probably later this week or this weekend. One of the two. Haven't quite figured out exactly what day, but this week I have to do some work. Wish I could find a Cory source on Hestatus. Every time I start thinking I should get some of those, the season ends. Yeah, that's the biggest problem. Some of those fish are very seasonal. So it's a matter of just like you have to get them at the right time. Or you just can't get them. Nope. Man, Aves Creek starting to pull away strong. Do you have, Isabel C, do you have any tetras? Not anymore. For a while, if you look back kind of historically, I had a big group of Kochu tetras. And I really like the Kochu tetra, but they can be a little fin nippy, so I tend to keep them on their own. Um, but I had at one point, I think 80 of them in a 40-gallon breeder. It is a really cool tank to watch because it was super heavily planted. That was my plant farming tank, my plants for profit tank, and those are just the fish that coincided in that tank. While it was mostly for plants, those are the fish in there, and they looked stunning. If I were to do a different tetra nowadays, I'd be really tempted to do the penguin tetra, just because I like that silver with like the black hockey stick stripe. Or I would look at something probably like an emperor tetra or a Karai tetra, one of the ones that has a really, really tight schooling pattern, but isn't the rummy nose. Like, rummy nose are common, rummy nose are awesome, don't get me wrong, but I kind of like the less common stuff typically. The only other tetra I can think of, other than that, there's the oh man, they have the bigger body like a Serpe tetra, but they were like a lemon. I can't remember their exact name. I think they called them like the lemon sunset lemon tetra or something like that. There's one that has like really bright orange fins, but a lemon yellow body, and that very cool fish to me. But tetras are not usually. I actually like danios more than I like tetras. So, and most of that comes down to I like how active danios are compared to tetras. Where tetras are kind of like a little more chill, which is why you'll find like in the tetras I like the harder schooling tetras because they move about more, and I love that movement. Where like a Kayafit danio or even like a common zebra danio, they're a little more active fish, and I really like that. I like fish that are really mobile and doing lots of stuff. Robert Johnson, how big do a tinjo get? 3.5 to 4, up to 5. More commonly, I would say that 4 inches is about right. I have a big Atinjo male from Bob Steenfott, and he's probably close to 4.5 inches, but he's an old boy. He is easily 9 years old. Easily. That might Von Rio Tetra might be right. I need to look at it. There's also the blueberry tetra, which is a really cool fish, just in general. Yeah. The Von Rio tetra. This is correct. Sometimes called the flame tetra. Really cool tetra. I also do like the green fire tetras. But yeah. Pearl danios. Pearl danios are beautiful. So are glow light danios. Glow light danios are really, really awesome. I think they're really underrated. Danios in general are underrated, except for like the CPDs, because everybody loves the celestial pearl danio, and I don't blame them. They're awesome, but I think a lot of the other danio species don't get enough love. They're really cool fish. And eventually I've got to do like a native tank, but that requires cooler water, not getting as hot, and all that kind of nonsense, right? So I got to do specialized. Silver tips. So silver tips, I would rather have Kochus over silver tips if I'm going to take a tetra that is naturally a little fin nippy, because it's got that beautiful blue color to it and lots of like iridescence. It's really neat. Little pink spots toward the tail, which is just kind of neat. Where like the silver tip, cool, but you know, I see lots of them. Corey's a silver tip tetra guy. Let him do those. What are your thoughts on ammonia nitrite and phosphate pads for the Flugel 407 lines? Well, in theory, if you're doing everything right, you don't need them. Right? If you take your time and you're patient about how you fill out your tank and you let everything establish and you're balancing things and you've got plants, you don't need that nonsense. Where I would see those being useful is in like a bare bottom tank, and you need some kind of chemical filtration to help you. But then at that point, wouldn't you just be better off using, you know, some kind of like activated charcoal product or something like that, where unless you specifically, or like a carbon impregnated pad over like a specialized only ammonia, only nitrite, only phosphate, only nitrate, whatever the heck, right? Just my thoughts there. Black Phantom Tetras with silver dollars. Rye Outdoors, that does sound awesome. A big group of Black Phantom Tetras, I think, is really underappreciated. They're beautiful fish. Both them and the black skirt. Like, honestly, both those fish are really good looking fish. But I think we've gotten to a point now where, like, they're such a common fish from a while back that we're just like, it's boring. right? And then we look at like some other crazy nonsense out there. But yeah, I big groups especially big groups of tetras can be really cool. I can't remember. There's a video I saw, and granted, it's like the atypical. It's rummy nose and cardinals, but I saw a video. It was like a 1,500-gallon tank that had thousands of tetras in it, and I could sit and watch that thing for days at a time because in that much water volume and with that number of fish, you see such a different behavior than what we normally see in our smaller tanks. And it was just like, okay, this is real. This is cool. This is different. Especially that size with tiny fish. These just huge schools of them moving around. Awesome. How about the bloodfin or raccoon tetra? Do I remember what a raccoon tetra looks like? I think the answer is no. Oh, dude, those are wild. Why do they call that the raccoon tetra? To me, that doesn't scream raccoon, but man, the color and that really long dorsal fin is incredible. So Dan's got these things. Woo, doggies. Those are cool. All right. You guys just distracted me this whole time. I want to say this vote is close. Impressively close. Aves Creek versus Ooter. 51% Aves Creek. I mean, you've spoken. We know what we're doing. Just got to get that thing put together in Aquascape first. Get it all settled in. Let the biocapacity, all that bacteria do its thing, and then we're going to order some fish. So there you go. You guys have literally chosen the fish for my next tank. Ooh, Mike Stanbaugh. Good to see you, buddy. Just set my mom up. An unheated 55 with 12 rainbow shiners and 25 white clouds. Might add some Scleromystax barbatus. I like it. Shiners are something that I think are just super interesting. I love rainbow shiners. I just need to like buckle down and eventually do it. Team Ooter will never rest. Don't worry, I'll have Ooters eventually. They're local to me. It's just a matter of like getting tank space. Slowly but surely, we'll get there. Maybe the next tanks. There's 2 tanks I'm setting up in the near future. Both 40-gallon breeders. Both of the different things. We'll give you a little preview. There has been a preview before of what's happening in the other one. It involves a plate under substrate. And a bit of an experiment, if you will. We're going to see how a certain filtration system holds up. Yeah? Although with that, the fish going in that might be a little different. We'll see. All right, gang. We've hit that time. Oh, I do want to cover this though. Nathan Hovey, I have Diamond, Lemon, Priscilla, Buenos Aires Tetras in a 55 with 3 Australian rainbows and 2 Bolivian rams. That sounds like a wild tank to watch. The CC on that. I'll have Hooters eventually. Thank you, closed captions. Trying to translate non-English words to English. I appreciate you. Oh. Maybe we need to call them like a Tinjo Extreme, but I'm sure that it can't like do that one correctly either. But yeah. We'll see. I think this is gonna be a fun tank. I think you guys are gonna like it. It's gonna take a little while to get like the setup going because I have to tear down the current tank as it exists. Get all the filter and stuff that's off of it. The few remaining plants that are in it out, and then it will need some more substrate. And I have to like slowly but surely go through all of a ton of rock and wash it all. But I think you're going to like it because she's got some ideas and they're going to be fun. So that being said, guys, That's going to take us to the end. We're going to end this bad boy poll. Bam. Glorious victory to the Aves Creek Bozemanai, but it was close. Very close. So that being said, gang, we'll be here next week. Watch out for a video this Saturday. If you haven't seen it, I had a fun video with my mom last Saturday that came out where he talks to some stories about her keeping fish back in college, and a mayonnaise jar and a teaspoon, and also some stories from like keeping fish when I was a kid, and our very very acrobatic betta fish. So go check that video out if you haven't watched it already. There's some fun stories in there. Time hanging out with my mom. I hope you will appreciate it. Anyway, gang, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your week. As always, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome. Chat, you're killing me. You're killing me. Killing me with these closed caption translations.